Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Mokonaman at YouTube with another airbrush review. Now I buy and sell a lot of stuff of late only to the Australian market, and this was sold to me. I've already got a customer for it, and with their consent I'm allowed to play with it, use it and review it before it goes in their hands in a few days' time. So this is the Dynamic Power. I believe it is a 0.3 mil. Let's have a look at it, and yep, that's about right. Generally, this whole facade is very similar to a Hyacinth. A lot of the thread and nozzles should generally be the same. Well, at least compared to my Hyacinth here. A few small differences. But the nozzles and all of the threaded items generally fit and are compatible. So parts is definitely not an issue. We shall go through the usual tests that you expect normally from my content. We're going to completely, fully pull it apart to see that it's capable of being maintained and used. So yeah, that's your normal nozzle. Put some paint through it, put some air through it, and spray some lines, as well as lubricate the internals with some Vaseline. It's as simple as getting a Q-tip. All of these internals up to the paint point is going to be lubed up. If any paint is to pass the seal there, it'll get caught in the lubricant, so that's not a problem. Now, the internals of the airbrush is generally very similar to what we've seen before. These are all identical parts and generally will fit in any other airbrush. What makes this a little different is that the airline falls short to this point, and we've got this adjustable valve for the paint cup. So that means when we're airbrushing we can reposition the air, but I'm not too sure if it's removable. Yes, it's removable. There's not much of a rubber seal besides one that's tightly in there. I'll see if it leaks or not, but there's a very, very small opening there. Not too sure if it's prone to clogging or not. But maintaining that is going to be a bit of a hassle. There's quite a bit of travel of paint to get to this point, and it's a very small opening that would go to here and out. So whatever goes past this point in here, your gunk, your bits of tissue, your build-up, you'll have to take the nozzle out and clean with a pipe cleaner. So generally, I'm not a big fan of this design, as you've got this whole area to be maintained, as that opening is a lot smaller than what's inside here. That is just asking for all sorts of clogging problems. Thread is insanely long, so it's not going to be leaking anytime soon. How this works is this is an independent internal thread, and once it's as tight as it goes in, you can pull back and position the cup however you like, and tighten this bit for it to stay. And if you don't tighten it too tight, you still got a bit of articulation. You have a tendency of airbrushing downwards a lot or whatnot. You can position the cup however you like it to take paint without sloshing too much. Again, not a big fan, because you can just put a lid on top of it, and if this gets loose or if you thread it, then the whole body of your airbrush is just stuffed, plain and simple. So these are the layouts of components, and this collection here has been lubricated. Time to assemble. Usually it's hardest to get the trigger in. It's very much like all the other Hyacinths and Deltas and whatnot. Just need to slide it in so it's seen on the other side. Once you've got the trigger in there, which is the hardest thing to do, we chuck in the solenoid straight away. If this is your first airbrush or you're new to buying airbrushes, pull it apart and put it back together multiple times. Trigger goes up and down, not too bad. It's springy, so we know that there's not too much lubricant, and the fact that the little brass bit went down the hole and not to the side. The rest of it in this order goes together very easily. We screw the assembly in nice and tight. Whoops, that just popped out. Take your time, assemble it slowly. It is very frustrating with the trigger, and don't be too enthusiastic until you get the needle in. Just test for resistance, which there isn't too much, so we can go needle first. And I believe that's gone all the way through. Sure has. And last, the needle nut, the most important bit that might fall off. If you do come across these second-hand, very cheap, whatnot, they're not too bad to buy for parts, but try to buy the exact same airbrush because, hey, you've got more parts available to you. When you pull the double action backwards, you should see the needle nut and needle go backwards and forwards. So that's attaching itself to the needle. Down, you'll see the air trigger at the bottom go up and down. The back can go on, and we can hook it up to an air supply. Now this I have not considered. Trying to hook it up to my KingMax compressor, but a conventional airbrush holder will not contain it. Nor does it really go well in these cleaning pots, so its non-conventional design is not really good for supporting it on anything unless there's a specialty airbrush stand for it that it may come with. I suppose you can lean it like that and just put a tiny amount of paint in it, but not ideal at all. So it sits like that with about less than half paint. Still don't like it. Let's spray the lacquer we have. So when you push down for air and you pull back, it takes a while for the paint to suck through. So I'm pulling back and there's nothing, and then paint starts coming back. So this is very, very weird for anyone that's airbrushed. When you pull back, you expect immediate paint. For a delay of that few seconds, pulling back, wait, then it starts finally happening. Not that exciting. Besides that, it's very small. So this might be a 0.2 nozzle, not a 0.3. The pattern is absolutely tiny. The control and the detail is really nice. I'm getting super fine lines. So this is really an excellent airbrush. I love its control, its paint pattern and all that. It's just, the storage is weird and the time it takes for the paint to comes out weird. Besides those two things, there's no splattering. It's a very good airbrush. There's not much to complain whatsoever. It's on par, if not slightly finer, and ever so slightly better than a Hysing. So let's have a look at the spray patterns. So it starts off by pulling a bit, and you can see how far it goes until it starts spraying. But it's very continuous, it's very thin, it's very consistent. It's not too bad. There's a slight amount of fuzziness once it starts to get a bit fatter, though that's because I've done no tuning whatsoever. A bit of work and that can improve a little bit. The seals are very, very tight, though they will wear out as time goes on. But yeah, not bad at all. Very, very tight lines. This has been the most furiously long and difficult airbrush I have cleaned to date. Due to the long path of the paint cup and that tiny hole to the chamber, then siphoning out of the nozzle. That long journey to flush the paint out of this, I suppose you can dismantle it every time, soak it, clean it, put a little thinner in it and blow it out. Or clean the cup like I did, flush, do the jet bubble technique 4 or 5 times. When there's thinner in it, it's still mixing with the paint, and the paint is just spraying out, and that took about 2, 3, 4 minutes straight. And then flushing it with thinner was a few more minutes, and then flushing it again and emptying it, because it just takes so long for the paint and the thinner to travel through and travel out. I think I thoroughly cleaned it, but it's not enough. If you put clear or change the colour, that's not going to be any good, and it's going to contaminate. So this thing is just a contamination nightmare. It's an absolute cleaning nightmare. So maintenance wise, and the reason why you buy a more expensive airbrush like a Iwata or a Sterno Hardbeck or anything like that is because they're just absolutely insanely quick to change colours and maintain them. It's not funny. This has been the craziest, longest airbrush to maintain. Spray wise and performance, excellent. Inconvenient to store and put paint in and hold, but for cleaning, definitely lowest mark, and for that and that purely alone, I do not recommend this really long arm. It's a nice experiment, it's interesting, it looks good, and it looks really useful, and this articulation, it's cool. But if you want to do things really quick, you want to change colours really quick, and at first you may be fine with it, but later on you will get impatient like myself. This is just not good enough. So I'm calling this not recommended at all. Would not buy it. To the gentleman I am selling this to, I'm selling it very, very cheaply at cost of my other airbrushes. He's actually stripping it for parts. He's missing a needle nut, he's missing an insert and an air solenoid. So he'll be taking that and enjoying the benefits of the rest of the internals and needle and nozzle and all that. It's just a stupidly low price. They're at a husk, which would probably be enough to throw out. But yeah, that's the go. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content. This has been the Meconoman. I usually do a lot of airbrush reviews, tutorials. I post videos once a week. And just as an extra bonus, anyone living in Australia, I sell airbrushes. So send me a message. I'm happy to hook you up with accessories and whatnot. Rest of the world, you hunt around, Amazon, eBay, Taobao, whatnot, you'll find them. Just very, very slow on shipping. Catch you guys later, and stay tuned for more content. Happy to answer questions. See you later.